So, hi, welcome to another episode of NetSupport Radio. My name is Mark Anderson. I'm Head of Education at NetSupport. I'm a former teacher as well, and I mentioned that today because my subject was computing, secondary teacher, and one of the difficulties and problems I found over the years was actually giving some context. Some things in computing can be quite abstract, some of the thoughts and thinking around it. And physical computing is something which is an important part of the curriculum. And I was really excited. I've used plenty of gadgets over the years, but I was really excited when I got to get a bit hands-on and learn more about a tool that we're going to be talking about on the podcast today. Award-winning, this particular tool won the BET Awards at the BET Awards, not all of them, but for their second, they won the BET Awards earlier this year. It was great to be able to talk with them on the stand and as part of the Check It Out show today. But I'm really excited to have a more in-depth conversation with Sandy from Robotical today. So welcome to the show today, Sandy. How are things going with you? Are you doing okay?
Hello. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, you're very, very welcome. As you can tell, I'm quite excited about this conversation today, and I can see you've got a Marty just over your shoulder there as well.
I do.
Can you bring him front and centre so we can have a little look at Marty for a second?
Absolutely. So this is Marty, and Marty's our walking, dancing, football playing robot. So as you can see, it's a proper sort of mini humanoid robot, and got moving legs. You can sort of balance, you can walk, you can wave, and most importantly, we've got these moving eyebrows. So Marty can be angry, or Marty can be a bit more excited, and obviously. All right, now I'm just moving Marty around by hand, but you can program Marty in a whole bunch of ways, from unplugged mode, like really simple color cards, through sort of junior blocks, regular blocks, into Python. So it's quite a powerful little robot full of sensors and things, but mainly it's just a really fun way to make STEM exciting. So yeah, this is Marty.
Brilliant stuff. I mean, I've shared already. I'm a bit of a fan, but coding, Sandy, is a really important life skill for lots of different reasons. I'm on board with that. I wouldn't have had the teaching job that I did if it wasn't something that I was passionate about. But for our listeners, Sandy, can you tell us a little bit where your passion for coding came from and why you think it's an important skill?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I was a little bit lucky growing up because my parents were quite into gadgets, and we had things around the house. Like we had a ZX81 old school computer and a Spectrum,
Showing
and
your
we
age
had.
there.
I am a bit, yeah. Well, that was a little bit old when I was growing up, but yeah, we had these things around, and my dad had done a programming course with the Open University, so he'd learned a bit about programming, and we had these things lying around. So I used to just play around. We used to play games on the Spectrum and things, and I enjoyed. Just playing around and sort of making words come up on the screen and doing basic programming. And I'd always also been the kind of kid who takes stuff apart and puts it back together and just enjoys kind of making things. So as I was growing up, I got into making websites when I was a teenager, initially just as a hobby, but then I turned it into a kind of side business just when I was going up through school, just to complement the pocket money. And again, it was just very exciting making things, making websites for local businesses and stuff, and just being able to do things where you can, type in some code and then make things appear on the screen and make things happen. And I always found it quite interesting. When I then decided to go off to uni, I decided to study robotics. Again, like I really love physical computing, as you touched on there. And I think robotics is a huge growth area. It's going to be something that's massive in the future. And I thought, that's something I find really exciting. Making websites is one thing, but writing code and seeing a robot move around in the real world is just kind of like magic. So I wanted to go and study that. And so then I went through university and ended up going to do a PhD in walking robotics as well, before I founded Robotical. And for me, I think it's a really important skill because firstly, I suppose it is a hugely important transferable skill. And computational thinking, I often think of as kind of like a framework for problem solving. Like you're learning how to break a problem down into simpler chunks, figure out a sequence to solve it, think about how exactly you'd go about it. Whether you're giving the instructions to like a friend or like a team you're managing or a computer, it's in very many ways a similar process. Like you're breaking down a problem. It's a great way of just looking at how to solve problems. And I think aside from that, computing and coding, it's a very useful transferable skill for many, many jobs, whether you're just going to be using Excel. Coding comes into it potentially. It's a way of actually getting more out of what you're doing. But also for jobs that are more directly related to programming. I think there's currently about 750,000 unfilled kind of tech jobs across Europe at the moment. There's loads in the US. There's a growing skills gap. And programming and coding is just one of the key skills that's missing at the moment. And so I think it's not only is it quite an enjoyable profession and something that can be quite creative, quite exciting. It's a type of engineering. It's also something where there's a huge skills gap. And so it's really important to be getting more students into these subjects so that we're able to meet the needs of the changing world of work as the future goes by. As we get more into robotics and automation, the number of jobs doesn't necessarily change, but the type of skills they require does. And we need more highly skilled people around. And coding is a key skill, whether you're going to be a geologist or a website designer, working in MATLAB or working in Python. It's a really important set of skills to learn. And so I think that's just critical to get students engaged with these things and ready for the world of work and just aware of how things work around them. And even if you're not going to be a coder, it's useful to know how computers work a bit. So it's not just all completely like magic. You do have a bit of an idea how these things you're interacting with actually work.
No, absolutely. I saw something which really resonated with me just very recently, actually, and it was somebody who I had a previous conversation with about this particular topic, and is computing, a part, a necessary skill in everyday life, and they were adamant that it wasn't. I went back to them after I saw them tweet about how the algorithm on Twitter was feeding things that they didn't really want to see. So hang on a second. Where did you learn this term algorithm? What is an algorithm? How does it work? How did you know that it wasn't that? It is so integral to everything that we do in so much shape or form. And I think just like we need functional literacy for reading and engaging and being able to read ingredients on packets or whatever it is, or on financial numeracy and
so you can understand what's in the news.
Absolutely, exactly, so no, I'm completely on board with your thinking there around it being an essential skill, even if it's just understanding how traffic lights work at a basic level. I spoke with your colleague after you won at the Better Awards, and congratulations again to you for your big win there. That must have been a great evening for you.
It was amazing.
Your colleague shared a great story about how Marty came to be. So could you tell us a little bit about the story behind Marty and how Marty came to be, and go into a bit more detail about how it actually works? I mean, you shared a bit at the outset, but how does it actually work?
Yeah, sure thing. So Marty came about while I was finishing off my PhD, and we used to do a whole bunch of workshops and outreach, science festivals and things. And we demo lots of robots. And we had these wheeled robots, and we had these walking robots that sort of walked around, danced, and played football. And they were always the really exciting ones. They stole the show, but they cost sort of tens of thousands of pounds. So they're a little bit out of reach of your average person or your average school. And about the same time, I was looking for a robot to get for my niece who was growing up. And I thought, right, I'm the robot guy. I'm into kind of all this education outreach and stuff. What can I get to get her a bit excited about coding and robotics? And I was a little bit, I suppose, disappointed in what was available on the market at the time, because either it was wheeled robots, which are, great, but not as exciting as I know robots can be. Or it was kits that were very difficult to use, things with a steep learning curve, or that were hugely expensive. So I set about saying, well, I'm doing a PhD in walking robots. I know how to make these things, and can I try and make a humanoid robot, like the most engaging learning tool, this really exciting robot that's a little bit more accessible, affordable, while still being easy to use? And that was kind of the concept for Marty. So had to be humanoid, had to have a sort of character and a personality, and had to be something that you could start out with, using something like Scratch, just drag and drop coding. And so that was the basics behind it. And so that was back in 2014. I sort of started on that mission, and then started out just 3D printing prototypes. Eventually, ended up with something that looked a bit like Marty, and running it past Juliet to make sure that she approved of how Marty was coming together. And and it's all built from there. So did a crowdfunding campaign initially just to test the water and say, well, this is something that I think is cool. Do other people agree? And then we were quite lucky that some people did agree. So we were able to get enough backing to bring Marty to production. And then we're now into version 2 of Marty, which is what we won the Better Award for this year. And it's basically just an iteration of everything we've learned over the last few years. So it's just a really kind of easy to use humanoid robot. So Marty walks around. There's 9 motors, so you can kind of balance, you can turn, you can dance, all sorts of things. And in terms of programming, we go right the way through primary school. So you can start off at P1 with unplugged mode, which is color cards, and you just have instructions from Marty that are like go forward, go backward, go left, go right, stop and dance, really simple things. But you can put them down to be like, okay, how do we get Marty around an obstacle course or around a maze or something? And it's just taking computing off the screen, making it very, very, very exciting. And then we go through from those color cards through Marty Blocks Junior, which is based on Scratch Junior. So using the app and connected to Marty over Bluetooth, drag and drop blocks, just icon based, very straightforward to use. Through into Marty Blocks, which is based on Scratch 3. And again, that's just blocks. And then into Python. So we do this full suite of kind of this learning progression across primary into secondary as well, although we find most of our users are currently at primary school level. And a big part of the mission for me, and sort of what, again, coming back to what kind of motivated this, is what would be exciting for my niece, is how can we get more people into STEM? So not just the ones who are like me, who are already, bashing away on the ZX81 at home, but kids who maybe haven't already engaged with these things. And STEM careers, particularly computing, there is a bit of a gender gap. There is a bit of a socioeconomic gap, and that starts way back in school. And however it comes about, I think the best way to address it is in primary school, to get as many students as possible realizing that computing could be for them, that they can do it. Even something like, I made a robot walk today. Like, that's cool. That's a really powerful thing to have learned. Like, if I can do that, then I can do kind of anything. So to get as many students as possible, kind of having that, just that kind of really epiphany with technology to say, oh, I could do that. I could do this coding thing. And actually, maybe it is kind of fun, and maybe it is kind of creative. And to get more students involved who maybe hadn't quite clicked onto that before. And so a tool like Marty, where there is this humanoid aspect, this character, this connection, and the ability to do some storytelling and stuff around that, tie into literacy, tie into numeracy, is hopefully just a useful tool for getting as many students as possible engaged with STEM. And even if they don't decide to take it as a career after that, at least, it's giving more options to explore the subject.
Absolutely, and it gives them, I say, that awareness in society of how it all fits with what they do in their engagements as well. So, I'm firmly on board with seeing computing as a core curriculum subject. I think it's hugely important. Just thinking, Sandy, if I'm watching this or listening to this and I'm thinking, do you know what, this sounds absolutely brilliant, and I'm a computing lead in a school, or I'm a teacher of computing, or I've got responsibility for STEM, and I think Marty sounds absolutely perfect. Could you sort of share a little bit about onboarding, how people can, I can share some resources. In fact, I'll do that now, just share the website address. You can follow Sandy and the business on Robotical Ltd on social media there. You can see that on Sandy's Avi just there. And you can visit robotical.io, as you can see going across there. But could you share a little bit about maybe some of the resources that are available and how you sort of onboard and support schools that are new to using Marty, and the resources that go through? You talked about the progression. I'm guessing there are curriculum resources to go with that as well?
Absolutely, there are. So we've got about 100 lessons that are linked to various curriculum, so including the national curriculum in England, the CFE in Scotland. So we've got a huge amount of lessons that span through all the way through primary school and into secondary as well. And then in terms of onboarding, so we actually offer a free trial for Marty. So any school that wants to can try Marty out for 2 weeks, kind of no obligation, just to check that that Marty is a good fit for you and your teaching style and your class and everything. And just try before you buy, because any sort of tech investment is an investment for a school. And the last thing that we want to happen is Marty's end up just at the back of a cupboard not getting used, as is sometimes the case with tech in schools. So we offer this free trial. And then during that process, you'll have an onboarding call with one of our team who will walk you through how to get up and running with Marty. So that's a sort of 15-20 minute video call, or a bit longer if you want, that just tells you how to get started with Marty, how to use the app. So again, like We're compatible with iPads and Android tablets and Chromebooks. So just making sure that all gets up and running okay, and there's no issues with your ICT setup. And then taking you through how to use the lessons and resources, how to use all the various features of Marty, and getting you comfortable to run lessons with your class. And so we recommend, obviously, for a class that you get not just one Marty for the whole class, but you might have sort of three students to one Marty or so. So you've got working in groups. And for the initial free trial, obviously, you just have the one robot, but it's still a great way to test out Marty. And we have some lessons that are geared towards that situation too, where you do have just one robot in a class. So so we're very much there to try and support the educators. We're always working on more tools to support them, so more lessons, and we're working on improvements to interfaces and tools to help teachers gauge their students' progression as well, or in the process. But we're really keen to make sure that we do have lessons that actually work for teachers, that we are constantly building this library. And as I said, it's currently 100 lessons. And yeah, we're adding to it as well. So there'll be more stuff coming in, tying into numeracy, literacy, or various extracurricular things, as well as, cross-curricular, as well as coding.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. And lovely you got those resources that can work. And that you got the opportunity to get hands-on with Marty, as it were, to try before you buy, so to speak. Such an important part of the process there. My final question is for you, though, Sandy. You were talking about getting Marty to play football earlier. Have you been in touch with the England team by any chance after our recent performances? I'm wondering whether Marty might be a bit of help for us on the pitch.
We've not, but perhaps we should reach out. Yeah, we're based up in Scotland, so I don't know. Maybe I think Scotland could also do with a hand. So maybe we want to reach out there first. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant stuff. Well, look, listen, absolutely fantastic to have the opportunity to have a chat with you, Sandy. And I love chatting with founders and hearing their stories behind how their products have come to fruition. And such a lovely story to hear that about yourself and your niece from you yourself, about how is she now one of your biggest advocates? Is she a big fan of Marty?
She is, yeah. So she's now in secondary school, and she's doing computing, which is good to see, amongst her other subjects. So yeah, it's exciting. And actually, we hear stories as well from our users about. Obviously, Marty's been around for a few years now, so we're starting to get stories for people who've decided to go off and study at university because, well, not just because of Marty, but Marty was one thing that made computing exciting for them in school. That's really great to hear. So we love hearing those kind of stories about how customers have actually got on with Marty, and hopefully we are having a bit of an impact that we're trying to have.
I'm sure you have, and like many teachers, they get into education to make a bit of a dent in the universe, and so I think you're definitely doing that with the offer for Marty there. So brilliant stuff. Thank you very much for joining me for a conversation on NetSupport Radio. And just a reminder, you're very welcome, Sandy. And just to remind you, you can follow Robotical on social media, on Twitter at Robotical Ltd. And just bringing it back up across the screen at the bottom there, if you wanted to find out more, please do reach out via robotical.io, where I'm sure you better get in touch and see all the various features and all of that in much more depth, and get in touch to have that whole try before you buy sort of experience. So thank you very much indeed, Sandy, again. And look forward to having a chat with you again in the future. Maybe Marty's version 3.0 will be coming in the not too distant future.
Yeah, you never know. Well, lots of exciting things in the pipeline. So yeah, keep in touch.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you very much indeed. And thank you for listening to NetSupport Radio. Of course, please do check out, if you haven't subscribed to us, please do get on your subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you want to find out more, please do visit netsupportsoftware.com/radio. Thanks for that, and catch you all soon. Cheers.